All right, we're about 1 minute from starting. My name is Tammy Annabelle. Welcome, guys, so much for coming. You're in for a treat. I've known Ashley for many years now, and she's an amazing speaker. So make sure you're going to take good notes. You're going to learn a lot. All right. Welcome to today's Launch and Learn. Our topic is You Are Your Brand, PR Tips from a PR Pro. We're going to go ahead and get started, and just want to make sure that everyone knows that we are going to be recording today's presentation. If you're new to Zoom, please keep your video off. You can turn it on, but for some of you, if you have internet problems or your internet's not that strong, it'll be worthwhile to you to keep it off. But it's really important that you remain muted throughout the presentations. You can submit your questions in the chat during the presentation, or you can, in the chat, send it directly to Claudia. And please be very respectful of the other attendees, and especially our speaker. So let's talk a little bit about the program today. We have put together a series that connects life science and health job seekers with learning and networking opportunities in Central Texas. Now, this is a pilot program by the Capital City Innovation Affinity Network partners. So we really appreciate your feedback. So please make special note of that link, because we really do need to know from you guys whether or not this is something that's working for you. Any kind of opinions that you have is greatly appreciated. If you want to volunteer, we'd love to have you volunteer and be on our steering committee. Please send an email to howdy@capitalcityinnovation.org. So our program steering committee consists of Verena Kalhoff, who's the workspace manager at Texas Health Collab at Dell Medical School. Josue Moran, who's a senior scientist and program manager at Frameshift. Tammy Annabelle, that's me, executive director at Temple Health and Bioscience District. Lisa McDonald is the director of healthcare at Austin Technology Incubator. Claudia Rushman is the associate director for entrepreneurship, MARC at Texas State. Nancy Lyon is the interim director at ACC Bioscience Incubator, and Victoria Odell is our program and communications manager for Capital City Innovation. About Capital City Innovation, it's a nonprofit facilitating Austin's Innovation District. The Innovation District is an inclusive community focused on creating new models of health and economic growth for all. The flagship building will open in 2022, isn't it gorgeous, in downtown Austin. And you can learn more about all of this at capitalcityinnovation.org. And I know you're wondering, who are these affinity partners that we're mentioning? And it's a regional network of organizations supporting health and life science innovation across Central Texas. And our partners include ACC Bioscience Incubator, Austin Technology Incubator, Dell Medical School, Drug Dynamic Institute, Star Park, Temple Health and Bioscience District, and Med to Market. And again, here's your link to learn more. So in October 2nd, we are going to have Tom Kowalski speak on a Texas life science perspective. Make sure you book that date now, because he's an amazing, engaging speaker, and he's really going to talk to you about the potentials in Texas for life science. So that's one you don't want to miss. Temple Health and Bioscience District has a monthly e-learning series, and we also videotape these series so that you can go to our website and look at past webinars. But this next webinar coming up has to do with COVID-19, the pandemic. from one lawyer's viewpoint. So if you have your own business or you're working for a company, you really want to tune in here and find out what's legal and what's not. Science and all, y'all. Is that a great name or what? This is a podcast about the Bioscience Incubator located inside Austin Community College's Highland Mall location. It's not a deep dive into the science itself, but a podcast exploring the reasons behind these companies' existence. I would strongly recommend you tune in. So today I'm going to talk to you about our speaker, Ashley Schlosse. She's the founder and CEO of Live Out Loud PR. And I picked the wrong sheet. Let's try that again. She's the founder and CEO of Live Out Loud. Ashley brings more than 10 years of experience as a full-service public relations expert, specializing in graphic design, media relations, contact development, brand building, community engagement, media monitoring, and event management. Ashley works closely with companies in biotech and other industries to bring their vision to life and get their message heard. And on a personal note, I've known Ashley now for, I'm guessing, 4 years. She is my PR firm for Temple Health and Bioscience District. And I can tell you that without her, we would not function. For those of you that are on social media with Temple Health and Bioscience District, that's all Ashley. I will invite you also to go to our website and check it out because she made that entire website. So on that note, I'd like to introduce Ashley to you, and I'm going to let her take it away.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Now I'm going to share my screen and making sure everyone can see. Yeah, gosh, it's such an honor to be here, and Tammy invited me to this special series, and you know, the first thing I did was ask who my audience was. So I'm really excited to learn about you guys, to hear from you, and kind of learn about what you need. So today really is going to be an overview of how to develop your own brand. And you may have never thought of yourself as a brand, as you're like, I'm a person, I'm not a brand. But in fact, I would argue that each one of us is our own brand, how we are perceived by the public. So I'm excited to go over just a top level overview today of communication and the importance of being your own brand in order to get what you want from either your career goals or whatever goals that you're pursuing. So again, thank you so much, Tammy, Victoria, Verena, the whole crew for having me today. And with that, we'll get started. So as Tammy said, I do PR. I actually started Live Out Loud 6 years ago, and I, before that, worked at 2 different global PR agencies here in Austin, had a presence in Austin. So I, you know, I don't think anyone should claim to be an expert necessarily, but I definitely enjoy what I do, and public relations is my passion. So just to define it, you know, a lot of you may be hearing PR. What is PR? Well, I think this day and age, in the current crises that we face, people are getting to know more about what PR is between the issues going on with social injustice as well as COVID-19, the pandemic. Crisis relations has been kind of skyrocketing because it's so important for people to clearly message what they're trying to say, whether you're a company or a leader. So public relations is what really, really is crucial to helping your message get out there and help it get out there clearly, so that you can make sure you're targeting your audiences in the right way. So defined by the Public Relations Society of America, public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations or brands and their public. So what does that mean? That really means that, again, you are an entity that is trying to communicate to a public audience that is public relations. And so PR people help sort of liaise between that audience and your entity or your organization. So that communication flow has to be, especially in this day and age, authentic. it's got to be done in a way that gets your message across without seeming disingenuous or not helping you to get your goals. PR is not necessarily sales, but it is all about communication so that you can support sales goals, marketing goals, company goals overall. So at its core, PR is about influencing, engaging, and building a relationship with key stakeholders across a myriad of platforms. So if you think about, here I have this microphone. Speaking is one way to communicate, but there are actually so many exciting ways to communicate, especially this day and age, both virtually with social media. There's networking events, conferences, but we'll get into that a little bit later. It's all about framing that public perception. So let's say that, think of all the worst political crises that you've seen in the news. What is it that they're using to, persuade public perception? They're using PR tactics. Think about sometime, a brand launching at a national level. If they want to get their point across, they're going to be using PR. So how do you communicate effectively? Well, I put together this little roadmap for us today, and it's going to guide our conversation. And so I also love a conversation that's a two-way dialogue. It's hard not to hear from you guys. So please put your questions in the chat, and I'd love to just have a conversation with you after this. So number one, we need to determine what our brand is. So know yourself, know your brand. Secondarily, know your goals. Third, we want to know your audience. Fourth is grow your network. And lastly, we want to engage and follow up. So number one, know your brand. Here we have this example photo, bencold.com. This is a person that he created his own brand online. It is an individual, but he kind of gets right to his mission statement, what defines what he does. I could see this for some of the research that you guys are doing. We'll get into the ways to present your work a little bit later, but just an idea of knowing your brand is all about knowing who you are, what you serve, your purpose, and you want to be able to define that quickly and with clarity. So the other question you want to ask yourself is, why should people care? So I know that can sound harsh, but unfortunately in this day and age, we have such limited audience reception to content. As you all know, there's 24/7 news cycles. We are all constantly being bombarded with content. In the marketing world, we actually, there's a lot of comparisons to consumers being goldfish, because at this day and age, we're all goldfish. We have like a 2-second ability to concentrate, and then we're on to the next thing. So I think when it comes to consuming media and public content. So it's very, very important to be able to define your brand, define it quickly and clearly, and to know why people should care. Because if you can't answer why people should care about what you're doing, then it's not as compelling, right? If you want to give them a reason to care about what you're saying. So that's number one in my mind, is as you define your brand. Now, the big thing, the recurring theme that I will be bringing up throughout today is the elevator pitch. And some of you may be like, what's an elevator pitch? Some of you may have heard of this. Basically, if you're in an elevator with someone, a complete stranger, and they say hello, you say hello, with masks on, of course, and they say, what do? You need to be able to have a 20-30 second elevator pitch to come back and say what you do. So that could look like, my name's Ashley. I run Live Out Loud PR. I do it because I'm passionate about helping businesses get their message heard. Whatever your 30-second elevator pitch is, be sure to craft it, know it by heart. You don't have to say it word for word, but just, be able to comfortably talk about your brand in 30 seconds or less to anyone. And then that will be very, very powerful in communicating your message and getting what you want. So also know your brand purpose. So again, just reiterating, define who and what you are helping and your goals for your brand. So I saw, some people are doing some very interesting research. There's some neuroscience majors. What is the science that you're working on? What are the innovations and technologies that you're working on? Is it going to help to try to cure cancer? Is it going to provide essential services for COVID-19. Why is it that you're doing what you're doing, and be able to talk about that and also share the passion behind it. Now remember, we also want to make sure to help people understand your story. So at the end of the day, we're all just storytellers. Each of us, just like our names are unique, our minds are unique, your story is unique. So start thinking about your story. Where'd you come from? How'd you get here? Why are you here? Why are you doing what you're doing? There's really nothing more powerful than your own story. And being able to craft that and tell that in a way that is compelling and engaging, that really is the most powerful thing you can do. And that's actually what I work on with so many clients, with Tammy, with THBD. We've worked for several years now to help craft the right story for the Temple Health and Bioscience District, to help tell folks, we are here to help startups. We are here to drive innovations across Central Texas. So what is your message, and how are you storytelling it to the Q public, and your target audience? So again, don't get caught up in the muck and mire of all the other brands out there, all the other stories out there. Yes, everyone is trying to have a voice and, speak up and talk about their own story. But remember, guys, your story is unique. Maybe you're a major at UT studying for your PhD, but the path that you got there was completely different. Think about how you applied to get to that position at UT, how you had to tell your story in order for the folks at UT to decide, yes, you're worthy of going into our program to get your PhD. So remember those times, remember your story, and be able to tell it. And also tell it authentically. So think about not just, the skills on paper that you have on your resume. Yes, you check the box on all these different technical skills, but what is it about your story that makes you unique? Is it that you lived in India for a few years and then came to UT because you're driven to Texas and, the culture of Texas, or what is it that's unique about your story? Really think about it and be able to tell it in a crafty way. And that goes along with the third bullet here, which is to make your story engaging. So here I'm going to talk about the importance of that two-way dialogue with your communications channel. So if whoever it is you're speaking to, make sure that there's a two-way dialogue, make sure that it's engaging. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But again, at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all seeking human connection. And you want to make sure that your story is inspiring and can encourage additional conversations. So when you think about defining your brand, for me, I'm a very visual person. I'm an artistic person. I use art and design to help define and make a brand visually compelling. So they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and they couldn't be more accurate. I think, especially with everything being online nowadays, you want to make sure that the whole picture is together. So you could have a great story, but if it's being presented in a way that's not visually compelling, then you're going to miss some people. And so this comes to some of your visuals that you're going to use. So let's say you're putting together a presentation for a networking event to showcase your research. Make sure that it looks visually good, right? Get feedback from others if that's not your territory, you're not in design, that's fine. But get help to make sure that you're visually putting together a great presentation, whether it's you as a person or your materials or your website online. Also, don't forget about business cards. I know that we live in a day and age where everything is virtual, but let's say you find yourself at a trade booth at a conference, and Tammy and I, for instance, are been to Bio last year, which is one of the biggest biotech conferences in the world. And business cards are so key. It's so important to give your business card to someone. Why? Because you have a conversation with people at a networking event or in-person event or whoever that you stumble across. Maybe you're in the elevator talking about your elevator pitch. You want to be sure to give a person a way to follow up with you after that conversation. So business cards are a great way to do that. You can also give a virtual business card or an email, get their email on your phone, however you want to do it nowadays. But just overall, business cards are a really great way to be remembered. So if you as students have not put together a business card, think about doing that and having it ready for that moment when you might meet the right influential person that you want to leave your card with them so that they have a way to follow up with you. That's so, so important. Also make sure it's a legible business card that people can read and also can lead to not only your email, but maybe a place online that you've created, a website to showcase your work so that they have reason to get to know you more. And this is just a little note about colors and fonts. So, make sure that you can really go far with your personal branding. If you want to say, hey, pink is my color, that is my brand. For Live Out Loud, for instance, we've got the peach and black going. It's just kind of defining your colors and defining your font and all those things. It's more of the design side, but quickly it does help to visually represent your brand. And then you want to be consistent for your brand across all the different platforms that you're using, and having those visuals kind of determined beforehand helps you to be consistent and helps people to recognize you right away. So next step is we want to know your goals. Gosh, 2040 on here. Can you imagine? I bet there will not be a pandemic anymore by that time. I hope. But we are learning a lot right now and we're getting through it. But anyway, imagine 20 years from now, where are you? What are you doing? What are your goals? 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, where do you want to be? So really, really think about your goals and what your mission is, and that will help drive everything that you're doing for your brand and who you're talking to and why you're talking to them. Have a purpose. So what I recommend is actually writing out a mission statement, even if it's for yourself. Take some time, take a whole day if you want. Get a nice cup of coffee and a pen and just literally write out your personal mission statement. Who am I? Why am I doing this? Where do I want to go? Also, if you're creating a startup or a company, this is so crucial to have is your goals and your mission statement. And then think about how you're going to get there. So this kind of breaks out, the objectives that are going to get you to those goals. And so if you guys have not mapped this out for yourself, gosh, it brings so much clarity to your life. Again, whether personally or for your career, if you've got your goals mapped out and on paper somewhere. I'm a big writing person. I like to use traditional pen and paper. Call me crazy, but that's really how I succeed. But if you're better on the computer, type it out, type out your goals and understand what it's going to take to get there, both short term and long term. And then define your vision. So a lot of people get mission and vision confused. Just to explain, a vision is a vivid mental image of what you want to be at some point in the future based on your goals and aspirations. So it basically, your vision is going to help guide your mission. So your mission is what you're doing, why you're doing it, but your vision is where you want to be in that 20-year time frame. Having a good vision for yourself and your business can stop you from heading in the wrong direction. So it can help you make decisions and determine what you need to do. So always have a strategy. So this is just kind of a reminder that, just like there's a scientific method, right? And Tammy's probably laughing because no, I'm not a science person. I'm a right brain communications person. I actually did, when I first got to UT, I did the CAP program. So I did pre-med for like a quick flash in the pan thinking, oh, I'm at UT, go big or go home. Not a pre-med person, not a medical person. So I really, really respect you guys for following your field. But just like in science, how you have to have a method, you've got to have a method for your brand and your strategy and your personal goals to get there. So again, writing out that strategy of how am I going to get there? What are my objectives? How am I going to accomplish what I need to do to get where I need to go? And especially for a startup, this is very, very important for your launch of your business, sustaining momentum, growth of your business, pivoting, and then just continuing on to grow as a business. So strategy is very key. So other piece here to communicating effectively is knowing your audience. This is probably one of the most important pieces that is most of the times overlooked. I had a great conversation with Verena and Tammy leading up to this event. And it just came up so many times in our conversation of how important it is to know your audience. Verena even shared that, in her line of work, she was interviewing a startup to see if they would be involved, and Brina, I may be butchering the story, but see if they'd be involved with her work at UT and the incubator. And before they even sat down, they didn't ask her one thing about herself. They didn't ask what she does. They didn't ask, her studies and the fact that she is a PhD and has all of this knowledge. And so they just started explaining their science, but in a very elementary way. And as a result, it did not come across well, because it felt a little bit like, explaining too much than was needed. And so as a result, that conversation did not go well, and Brina didn't end up working with that startup. And so it's just a great example of how important it is to know your audience. Are you listening to them first before you're having the conversation? So let's say you're at a networking event, the big room of people, you're presenting a poster, and someone comes up and you just go right into talking about your research and your science. You know nothing about these people. You know nothing about the person listening, where they've come from, where they're at. How can you relate to that person, right? Like, if you don't know them at all, how do you know how to spark a conversation that's meaningful or that has connection? So, you may be done presenting your poster and sit there and say, what do you think? And they lost, you lost them at the first minute, because they're thinking, this science doesn't relate to me at all. I'm a marketing person. I'm just here to meet other marketing people, or whatever reason. So you don't know where people are coming from, and you need to understand that before having a meaningful conversation. And so in order to define those goals and to get what you want, you need to understand who is it that you will be talking to in order to reach your goals. So who is the right audience then? And you want to define demographics, locate their location, their lifestyle, really understand your audience. Now, at a networking event, you don't always have the luxury of getting to choose who you talk to. Sometimes you run into someone and it's just a conversation and it's not someone that you really feel like might benefit you, but still you want to get to know that person. So you ask, who are you? Tell me about yourself. What's your story? Why are you here? And then once you hear that, you can understand where you need to go next with the conversation to say, oh, wow, this person isn't in my target audience, but I can still communicate with them because they may know someone that's important for my target audience. So understanding who your target audience is will help minimize unnecessary conversations with the people that you don't need to talk to, because maybe you don't need to sit there and explain your entire research work to them because they're not the right person. So definitely in your strategy, identify your target audience. Then you want to identify the right platforms for communication with this audience. So is it social media that they live on? Is it more LinkedIn than Facebook? Is it a networking event? Is it a one-on-one conversation with them? Always identify where your target audience is going to be, as well as knowing who they are. And then primarily, guys, if you get anything from this conversation today, please get that you want to always listen to the other person first. So I've said this before, I'll say it again. Hear someone else's story first so you know how to interact with your audience to find that connection. And I do that not only with my clients, but personal experiences. I can't tell you, even at the grocery store, if you so many misunderstandings happen because you're not taking the time to understand where that person is. Let's say you had and not a positive experience with the checker at the grocery store. Well, maybe if you asked how their day was, you would know that they, just lost someone to the pandemic, or they're having a tough day because they're tired, or whatever it is. Really bad examples. But anyway, the point is that you're getting to know the person so that you can meet them where they are and understand and have a basis for human connection. So again, just a little bit more about the questions you can ask yourself when you're talking to that person. So determine who you're talking to first, number one. And again, let's say you're at that networking event. You say, hey, who are you? Why are you here? And then think about you after you've heard from them. So start thinking about, what problem can I solve for this person? How is my work and how are my goals going to align with what they need in their life or their work to get where they need to go? And then once you think about that, you can start to really move forward in your career or your personal goals to get what you need. And then always remember that elevator pitch, but make it appropriate for the person. I can't tell you how many times it's been beneficial with, I think about Tammy and I in the booth at all the conferences that we've been to. Nothing like a conference expo to really get your wheels turning on talking to people, because you're at a booth and you're showcasing, maybe it's your technology. For us, it's the incubator. And we're talking about the different startups that are in that incubator. And depending on the person that we're talking to, maybe it makes sense to talk about the startup that has to do with cancer research, or maybe it makes more sense to talk about the startup that's doing 3D printing. But it really helps to guide the flow of conversation when you know your audience. And then remember that call to action and make your elevator pitch appropriate. So next step, you've defined your brand, you know your goals, and you know your audience. So you are so close to knowing how to communicate effectively. But first, you've got to grow your network. So once you've identified your target audience, go where they are, right? Don't be afraid to network. We're all just humans at the end of the day. And this can mean Zoom in this current time. There's so many different unbelievable resources right now during the pandemic. Hop on a webinar like you have today. Congratulations, you've taken the first step. Engage on a Q&A. Go to a conference when it's safe again. And, start inviting people on LinkedIn to be your friend and to connect with them. Find mutual interests with people online and in person when possible. And then continue to grow your network by sharing your storytelling in a way that is compelling and engaging and make them want to connect with you. And that will really get you what you need to get your goals met. And just remember, guys, don't be afraid. We are just humans at the end of the day. I think a lot of people can get overwhelmed, like, oh, I'm talking to the president of the, Dell Medical School, or the dean, or whoever it might be that you're talking to. Just remember, we're all humans at the end of the day, and don't let fear guide you. In fact, when public speaking, like right now, it really helps me to think about my audience and think about you guys first. I'm not trying to, if I start thinking about myself and, oh, am I saying this okay? Am I doing this okay? When you start having those thoughts about yourself, that's when you kind of lose everything engaging wise with the person. If I'm thinking about you and what you need, and I take the focus off myself, then ability to speak to other people becomes so much easier, because you're not worried about yourself. You're just thinking about the other person and what they need. So that's a great tip to use in any situation, but especially in advancing your career goals, as we're talking about today. So what are the venues for communication, connection, technically speaking? There are networking events. Social media is a great tool. Again, LinkedIn is going to be your number one for career growth and development, but there's also Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of those to help define your brand. Now, I realize you guys are thinking, oh, I have my personal stuff on my Facebook. You can always make your page private, but just know that anything you post is public. It does live online somewhere, I should say, but we'll get into social media in a minute. Email marketing, person-to-person connections, your website, public speaking, peer-to-peer promotion, and conferences and expos. And peer-to-peer promotion, let's say you're working on some research. If you had a testimonial from your professor or a person of significance that was reading about your work, that peer-to-peer promotion of your work is going to go a long way. And that's actually a big tactic that I use in my career for clients, is to help share testimonials and share other people's opinions of you versus yourself, because there's nothing more credible than hearing about your work from someone else or someone of importance versus talking about it yourself. Like if I sat here and touted, what I do all day long, it's not quite as convincing as Tammy's beautiful introduction of my work. Thank you, Tammy. Peer-to-peer promotion is definitely a preferred way to get yourself out there when you're trying to show credibility to new audiences. So establish your platforms of communication. This is where it's really, really important to, for growing your network, to have a website, guys. We're in year 2020. If you don't have your own personal website or a website to showcase your work, it is very, very difficult, especially in this virtual age, for people to follow up with you, to know more about you, to know what you do. LinkedIn is a great tool. It has areas for your portfolio and things like that, but LinkedIn only goes so far. If you have a link to your website on LinkedIn, it's going to really allow you to showcase everything about your brand and your work on your own personal website. And there are so many amazing, if you're not a website person, that's fine. If you don't want to pay someone to do it, that's fine. But there are, sites like Wix and Squarespace that make making a personal website very easy. Just make it a one-page site, but have a place online to house your important work, because that's truly the best way for people to understand what you do. And you can be as long-winded as you'd like, because you've engaged that person to the point, whether you met them and had a conversation with them or you met them on LinkedIn, they're going to click on your site and they're going to check out the website and learn more about you. And so you actually get to be selfish with your website and really, really showcase your brand and your work in a way that only you would like to. And again, it goes back to that storytelling. So if you've already got your brand defined, you've got your message, you've got your goals, your audience, you need to have all those things in place before you get to the point of making your website. Because if you have those in place, by the time you make your website, it's going to be easier, right? Because you're going to have all that content already, all that, ideas about what you want for your brand already ready to go. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed thinking about making a website because they haven't thought those things through first. And so they go to like a Wix page and they're like, oh God, I got this site here and the template here, but I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to put on there. But if you thought about that first and had your PR strategy first, then making a website is really just all about putting it together on one place online. So again, remember your audience, make sure that the user experience leads to something. Websites are not just there to sit there. They're there to help you reach your goals, which for the most part are someone reaching out to you and having contact with you. So a website can, maybe we can't do in-person networking events every day. We can't do Zoom calls every day. But a website is like another version of you that lives online, that people can learn about you without you having to make that connection. So the website should really exist to help make those connections online without you having to do it yourself. So it's a great extension of your brand. And so with that, you want to guide the user on the website to an actual connection with you, so that by the time you get someone to reach out to you and contact you, they already know about you. They know about your work. They know about your, your history, your resume, whatever it is that you're showcasing on their site. You've got then what we qualify as a hot lead on the website, because you've got someone that's contacting you after they've gotten to know you. So they're more interested than someone who you're just meeting for the first time. They've already met you a little bit. And then domain names, there's I think at last check, there's about 1.5 million domain names in the world right now. And that was like 2 years ago. So anyway, there's just so many domain names. So make sure to choose a domain name that is unique. Obviously your name is unique. So if you're doing like a personal career website, your name is fine. But make something that is memorable and unique, and always check your domain name first, because you'll want your domain to be also your social media property handles. So make sure that it's a name that you can remember if it's not your own name, but something that can be unified across platforms. So the other thing is, guys, we're dealing with startup technologies or maybe your own research. Always make sure that before you put your items online that it's got the IP protection that it needs, because you want to make sure that you realize that anything you put up either on social media or your website, it is public, right? It's public information. It can be seen by someone else. So always make sure that anything you're presenting is either already patent protected or IP has that IP protection, or don't put it online. So if you need more information about getting your content IP protected, your technologies, there's so many webinars on it. I think we have plenty with THBD that we talk about IP protection, but don't forget about that. All right. Moving on to social media. So again, this is another platform for communication. It's just, I look at it like another arm, another opportunity to tell your story. So each platform has its own unique audience behavior. Use it to your advantage. You know, there's Facebook, which is a little bit more personal. You've got your grandma on there. You've got your aunt on there. You've got your friends on there. So it's kind of like an online world where everyone participates in the conversation, for better or for worse. Twitter, as we all know, it kind of has become a soapbox as of late, but it's just a place to quickly share news. It's a lot more used at conferences, that sort of thing. Twitter is great for events because you can use a hashtag which connects all the conversations, and everything you tweet is public, whereas Facebook, you can make a private page. So if you set your settings correctly on Facebook, you can protect what you post. And then Instagram, you have the opportunity to have a private page or a public page. No problem if you want to have a private page on Instagram. Again, just know that the content is living somewhere. I'm not saying that people can easily find it, but just don't post anything you really wouldn't want anyone to see. Think about it kind of like you're walking out your front door, ready to go see the world. You're not going to, you're going to put your clothes on. You're going to make sure your presentation is decent. Think about that when you do social media. You want to always have that in mind when you think about your brand. LinkedIn obviously is the preferred method for career advancement and recruiting and interaction with professionals. So definitely a great platform to utilize. Please make sure to look all into LinkedIn and make sure you're using it effectively. Make sure that your page on LinkedIn is really great. I'll never forget, my husband is a software engineer, and he was setting up his LinkedIn page right out of college, and it was like, I am a robot 101. And I was like, okay, babe, we gotta change the LinkedIn page here. And so I had my way with it, and kind of gave him an introduction on LinkedIn to really define him as a person and talk about the problem he helps to solve as a computer scientist. What is he trying to accomplish for people? How would he like to help his next employer? And so being able to help him with his LinkedIn page actually did allow him better career opportunities. In fact, many recruiters were so delighted to see an engineer-minded person have a friendly LinkedIn page. Because if you think about it, HR professionals are not necessarily science minds. So when they're the ones doing the recruiting for these big companies, they are going to look at your LinkedIn page to see how your description is. Now let's really talk about the big elephant in the room, which is the fact that every single HR professional before you get hired is going to look at your personal social media page. Absolutely, it's going to happen. It always happens. I personally hired someone through Live Out Loud, my work, and I thought, ooh, here I am curious about these people I'm trying to hire. I'm going to go check out their Facebook page just to see if it's a culture fit, right? It was funny because I thought, oh, for sure, that's not needed. All I need is the resume and LinkedIn and make sure that they're, a live human that can do the job. Yeah, that's great. But, how is the culture fit going to be within the organization? It's such a huge component that some people miss out on. So if they go to your Facebook page and they think, oh, wow, this person is overzealous on some things that I don't like to see. Or, wow, this person's Facebook page shows me that their personal lifestyle is not necessarily going to be a good culture fit. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and we have to be so sensitive, guys, to being, making sure that what content you're putting out there is acceptable to a future employer. Now, again, there's privacy settings. So if you want to have your own rant about whatever it is, God knows there's a lot to rant about these days. Just make sure it's private, right? Put those privacy settings on there. Make sure that no public viewer of your page can really check it out. There's lots of different platforms online to check out privacy settings and how to set them correctly on your social pages. And then always remember that if you're using your social, especially LinkedIn, for your brand, you want to define your tone and voice and have the rule of thirds. And remember, if you don't use it, you lose it, which means if you don't ever post, and you're especially this goes especially for companies, then people are going to see that you're not engaged and they're not going to engage with you. Rule of thirds, by the way, is specifically for company social media. You don't want to sound like a used car salesman. So I always say, which is just someone that's overly aggressive, trying to sell you all the time. So don't, you've got your new site up. You're so excited to talk about it. Don't put your link in every single post you share. Make it conversational. Social media is a conversation with actual humans behind those user profiles, unless it's a Twitter bot. But make sure that your content is also engaging and just lives on socials. You're not always trying to lead someone to your website or your product. All right. Lastly, guys, we want to engage and follow up. So this is the really the cardinal rule of communication is to follow up. So many people, I just spoke to some students at UT on the communication side actually on Tuesday, and I told them, I said, even as communications professionals, you may be looking for an internship from me, you may want something from me, you may want to learn more about my industry and how to grow in it. I would be surprised if 90% of you, I told them, would follow up. I would be surprised if 50% followed up. In fact, I would be surprised if one person followed up after this conversation. People, get in their own heads or they get busy with their lives. They had a great conversation with someone that could change their life. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling so good about it. And then you dig into your own life and you it's a fleeting moment, the good conversations that you have. So always find a way to follow up with that person. Make sure you're grabbing their business card, their email, and make sure that you are following up in order to not only you're going to impress them by following up, you're going to surprise them. You're going to make a connection deeper than just that original introduction conversation that you had with them. And then you can begin to grow a relationship so that you have that network that you've built. So let's say in 5 years, your research is, you've got a white paper in the scientific journal and, you're ready to launch it to the world and you really need some help promoting it to other doctors. Well, that doctor that you met at the hospital, St. David's 3 years ago, if you had just followed up with him, gosh, maybe you would not feel so uncomfortable to ask him for something now, 3 years later. But hey, if you would have followed up and built a relationship and continued to check in with those people, then it makes that connection so much easier when you want to share resources and get what you need. So follow up, you guys. And I will be happy to report that I had about 15 people follow up with me after that conversation with those undergrad students in PR. So I guess my message resonated. So I'm going to tell you guys the same thing. If you're interested in following up with me, please do so. But also, more importantly, follow up with the industry connections that you meet that are going to take your technology or your science to the next level. And then I've got a little B on here because we like to keep the buzz alive in PR and just keep it alive, guys. Follow up. All right, that is all that I have. Thank you so much for your time. I do want to give a reading recommendation just in general for everyone listening on the call. I actually learned a lot of my communication skills from my dad. He's a huge talker. He was an IBM salesman for 30 years. He is someone that is loud and brash and talks a lot. And growing up, he said, you want to read the best book of your life, read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It is a great book. Anyone should read it, whether you're, an introvert, an extrovert, whoever you are, read this book. It will get you places. So that's really all I have. I look forward to checking out the Q&As. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. That was a great presentation. This would be a good time to do the clap emoji if y'all are able. Let's see. So Claudia,
Thank you.
Yeah, she wrangled some questions for us throughout the event, and then there are some that folks put in advance. So let's see. How about, I think this one would be relevant because you kind of touched on it. Somebody asked, how would you sort of apply networking principles to online conferences? Like how, what are some steps that online conferences are taking to even allow networking? I don't know. I haven't been in any personally, but they are becoming more prevalent. So don't know if
It's
you
a
have
great,
any.
no, it's a great question. So actually we're, there's the big MedTech conference that Tammy and I are attending, going virtual on October 6th. And we are entering the world of, I think before we were networking virtually, before we saw people in person, but now we're just, there's so much work you can do leading into these conferences now because they've set up a way to make virtual networking possible through online appointments with people. And so it depends on the conference, right? Not every conference is going to have it, but if they have a virtual networking platform that allows you to set up appointments beforehand with people that you may be interested in talking to, that's a great way to do it. So that way at the conference, you can actually network. Alternatively, there are virtual happy hours associated with conferences. So I'm thinking like big conferences. So definitely be sure to sign up for those. For your everyday sort of webinar online conference, what you'll want to do is, maybe even contact the host and say, hey, are you guys going to do breakout rooms? Zoom webinar has an awesome function where you can do breakout rooms. So it's like I go with Kelly Harper and Mandy Severson. I'm just looking at your names on here. And we go into our own room and we talk separately. And then 3 other people talk in their own room. And it's just it's actually funny. It feels like you're in person. It's like the most bizarre thing because I've done it twice at 2 different events online. And it's a really cool function. So see if that can be possible. If not, make sure to make note of the folks on the call and even chat, list their names, people that you heard speak. And again, follow up. So network with them socially, send a message on LinkedIn or even a Facebook message or an email. Heaven forbid you pick up the phone and call them, old school way. But all of that really, really works to network with people. And again, they'll be surprised because everyone is so in their own little silos in their homes right now, kind of totally quarantining out, as we all should be, right? But people are really needing that personal connection nowadays. So it really helps to surprise people. And then don't forget the value of a handwritten note, right? So if somebody did something nice for you, send that thank you note over to them, and it really goes a long way.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that was a great response. There is another question I think that can sort of go along with that one. And somebody who seems to have spent most of their time in academia wants to know if there's any advice you can provide for someone who's trying to leave their comfort zone. Yeah, I guess when it comes to like branding yourself and getting out there.
Yeah, my biggest advice is leave your comfort zone. Please. There's nothing, what does they say? Nothing worth doing comes without a challenge, right? For instance, opening Live Out Loud PR was a huge leap for me. That was a huge get out of my comfort zone. I was 25. I know I'm young, guys, when I started my business. And it was like, for me, a big deal because it was I had to have a lot of courage. I had to have a lot of support. I was fearful that I was going to fail, right? And I thought, well, first off, I have come from a family of entrepreneurs, so they were supporting me. So have the people that are closest to you support you in your dangerous endeavors, even if it means just getting out of your comfort zone. But I also knew if I fail, I'm going to fail fast, and I can always go back to my comfort zone. I can always go back to that agency world where I'm working for someone else if I need to. But the best thing about challenging yourself is that if you fail, you've really got nothing to lose, right? What's it going to hurt to go talk to someone you've never talked to before? If they're rude, fine, walk away. Have a conversation with someone else, but don't be afraid to fail because you want to fail fast so that you can pivot and do something else. But you would surprise yourself. So if you get out of your comfort zone, you may be like me, and 6 years later, you're still doing your passion. So, you never know.
Awesome. And we're going to round this out with one more question before sharing some of our closing slides. This is one of the first ones that came in. And it says, what would you showcase primarily as your brand? A technical expertise or transferable skills, or maybe it's something in between?
Yeah, I think something in between. It really, again, know your audience. Who are you talking to, right? So in order for me to answer how you should showcase your brand, I need to know who you're talking to. So for instance, if you're doing a resume for, let's use my husband as an example again, for Indeed.com, and he's, they're not only do they want the technical expertise as for their software engineers, they really want to know that you're a good culture fit. So I would first showcase my technical expertise to say, look at all my accolades, look at how awesome I am, look at all the things that I can do, and how many times I check the box on being amazing. Okay, now secondarily, check out my personality and my cool skills and how I do these things. And then, if it comes up in the conversation, your personal hobbies, like I love, maybe you like to hike on the green belt, maybe you like to wear red hats. I don't know, maybe the person you're talking to likes to wear red hats. So find that commonality between the interviewer once you get to that point, but at least showcase your skills to a point where you're getting your foot in the door, and then talk about those extra fun things that make you special.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. We really appreciate you spending time with us today. That's all the questions we're going to take for now. And Tammy is going to close us out.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. As we talked about before, your feedback is so important to us so that we know if we're in the right direction and if we're doing the right webinars that you're getting the most information about, because it's all about you, our audience, and how we can help you. So please make sure that you give us your feedback. Join us again. We talked about volunteering for a trainee-led steering committee so that you can give us your ideas and you can be part of molding and making this the best series possible. So don't forget to send that email to Victoria at howdy@capitalcityinnovation.org. And see you soon. Don't forget, our last Lunch and Learn, our next one is October 2nd, a Texas Life Science Perspective. Again, Tom Kowalski, you really want to make sure that you key in on that. Everyone, stay safe, wear your masks, and have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.